Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and I'm going to share the secrets of how to bring back that love and feeling, even if it feels like your husband hates you. In today's episode, I'm going to share what to do to restore deep connection and affection, even if your husband seems indifferent or actively seems to dislike you. My guest today is Mari, who spent 5 lonely years in her third marriage, fearing that she'd made yet another mistake and was headed for yet another divorce. But today she is no longer lonely in her marriage. In fact, she says she is the center of her husband's universe. She's going to tell us how she turned her relationship around and made it fun and sweet again. And then I'll be giving out the award for the worst relationship advice of the week, which you have heard this advice so many times it seems like the truth, but it actually doesn't mean what most people think it means. All of that is coming up, but first let's talk about how to bring back that loving feeling, just like the Righteous Brothers would sing about. Recently, a student named Sharon told me that she had no hope of having a happy marriage because her husband hated her. And when I asked her how she knew that, she said that he was always scowling at her and that he took every opportunity to say mean things. It sounded incredibly lonely and painful, and I could see why she was feeling so hopeless. And she had plenty of evidence that her husband hated her and that he hurt her intentionally. But I had a hunch her husband's hatred was more likely a symptom than the real problem. So if you're feeling like your husband is hateful or hurting you intentionally, here's what to do to heal your relationship. I want you to first ask yourself if he's hateful or just hurt. When you feel like your husband hates you, it's because you're incredibly hurt. Of course you are. In light of what he's done and what he's said, it's understandable. But if you flip the situation around for a moment and you consider the possibility that he might also be hurt, it's interesting to ask yourself if you were trying to hurt him. Was it because you hate him? Or was it because you wanted to defend yourself or try to get your own needs met? Or maybe so he would know how much he hurt you. If it was for those reasons, then consider the possibility that he is in the same boat as you, not setting out to hurt you, not getting up in the morning saying, how can I hurt her? But also not knowing how else to navigate the challenges that you've been having as a couple. Back in the battle days of my marriage, when I thought divorce was the only option, I spoke negatively about my husband to anyone who would listen. And I felt completely justified in doing this because I was just telling the truth, my truth from my perspective about all the ways he was a terrible, terrible husband. Francis O. Walsh said that some people find fault as if it was buried treasure. And I think he might have been talking about me back in those days, because now I know that the way I spoke about my husband was deeply disrespectful, and that hurt him. Even if he wasn't within earshot when I was griping to my friends about him, I didn't bother to change my tune when I was with him. Wherever I went, I was polishing those precious fault nuggets that I found. And his response, I now realize, was to be defensive. That meant he got an angry look on his face. And sometimes he said things that were downright mean, cruel. And he was definitely obstinate about not doing anything that I wanted. And all of that added to my endless list of evidence of how he was a hateful, horrible husband. It never crossed my mind that even big, strong men feel hurt, but they do. Especially when the woman who knows him best in the whole world speaks harshly about him to anyone who will listen. And just listening to Sharon, who had a long list of grievances, I recognized my old self. If she spoke that way at home, just as I had, it was really easy to see how her husband might also be defending himself mightily and even hostilely because he felt attacked. And as painful as it was to recognize my own contribution to the hostility at my house, it was also liberating. It meant that I could do something about it. I had the power. It wasn't hopeless because there was plenty that I could improve on. And once I did improve, of course, he didn't seem so hateful at all. quite the opposite. He seemed loving and sweet. That's how he seems now. So consider conducting an experiment where you clean up the criticizing and the complaining to see if your husband's hatefulness persists. So, how do you do that? You might ask. Well, I'm glad you asked. I suggest you issue a short and sweet apology. Now, when I suggested this to Sharon, that she consider apologizing for being disrespectful, she was very skeptical that this was necessary or appropriate. And I knew how she felt. I still get uncomfortable about apologizing for being disrespectful, especially if I'm also feeling hurt. And Sharon hated this whole idea. Apologize? Blah, no. But she decided she was going to do it anyway as an experiment. And she thought of something specific and she said, I apologize for being disrespectful when I argued with you about our daughter going to the school dance. So she didn't say, I apologize if I was disrespectful. And she didn't add any explanation. She didn't add a justification. She just said that one brief sentence, short and sweet. And then she was quiet and she was waiting for him to say, oh, you weren't disrespectful. Don't worry about it. But to her shock, he didn't. He looked completely sincere when he thanked her for the apology. And then something magical happened. The atmosphere between them changed. The tension left the building, and she could see that her husband didn't seem to hate her after all. He looked calm. He looked relieved. And she told me how nervous and amazed she felt, knowing just how quickly she could restore the connection once she knew what to do. So it turns out empowerment wears a disguise. Now, I still find myself owing my husband an apology from time to time for being disrespectful too. And it's a little uncomfortable getting there. Not that long ago, long after I knew better, we were out to dinner at a swanky restaurant, just the two of us. And I said something unkind about one of his clients. And he correctly took it as me trying to control which clients he gives priority to. So he made this irritated face. And I'm happy to report that this time I quickly apologized for being disrespectful. But other times it takes me a little while to get there. But when I do apologize, the results are always the same. Peace is restored throughout the land. And I feel connected to my husband, which I absolutely love. I equate apologizing with empowerment now. You want to feel empowered in your relationship? Want to feel like, I got the power. What can you apologize for to your husband? Think of it as an experiment and consider trying it on just to see how it goes at your house. How have you been disrespectful that you can apologize for this week? If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest, Mari, had given up everything to marry her husband, but soon after the wedding, she saw his true self emerge, and she knew that she had married the wrong man. She thought she'd be getting a life partner, but instead found herself saddled with a do-nothing, withdrawn stranger. He refused to talk about their expenses, and she watched as her life savings drained away and her home went into foreclosure. She thought she was headed for a 3rd divorce, but instead, she did a few things completely different than she had been doing them before. And today she has a marriage that exceeds her wildest dreams. Welcome, Mari. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us, what were things like in the bad old days in your marriage?
It's hard. It's hard to remember how bad it was. It was lonely. I was hopeless. said I had married the wrong guy. I was like old. I was in my 50s. I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed of myself. I couldn't tell my friends because, they looked to me as this happy-go-lucky single person who finally found the man. And I didn't. It was miserable. I was just isolated. I didn't know where to go or what to do. My husband wouldn't talk to me, and I was ashamed to talk to anybody else.
So you were completely alone.
Yes.
So was there a moment when you just thought, I can't go on like this. This is not sustainable?
There was, dragged along on life, support for a few years. And then I couldn't bear it anymore. And I started Googling divorce attorneys. A little interview that you did with the Huffington Post came up, and it sounded a little hopeful, maybe, possibly. Laura, this was my third marriage. And I was just, I didn't think I could do it, but I figured I needed to give it a try. I needed to prove to myself that I at least had done everything that I could. So I got your book, The Surrendered Wife. I read it, and it started to make a little bit of a difference. Some of the things I changed. The first thing that I did was I stopped buying him clothes. And my husband, he would just wear like the same pair of pants and the same shirt for his entire life if he could. But I knew that to be a successful person, you had to dress like you wanted to, And so I would always buy him beautiful clothes and beautiful shoes and shirts. And it was really important to me that he was well dressed. And his stuff was still in the bags. His stuff was still in the wrappers. And it just used to make me so angry. And so I stopped buying him any clothes.
So he didn't appreciate that at all, that you were buying this?
No, he never appreciated all the work I put into him acting the way I thought he should act.
Well, and how was he responding to you at that time when you were buying
He wasn't. He'd just say, "Oh, thanks," and he'd put it in his closet.
Okay.
And that was it. And, I'd spend so long on each thing, and he just didn't care. He didn't care what I thought. It felt like he felt like my only job was to be the maid. That was it. So the laundry was done. It just didn't seem to matter what I did.
And so you didn't feel that he loved you?
No,
he definitely didn't love you. You felt?
No, I felt that I was useful to him. But that was it. That was all I got from him. He couldn't even talk to me. He couldn't even let me know when he was coming home. He couldn't even call me to say he'd be home. And then I'd know he was home because I'd see that his car was in the driveway. So I'd have to go looking through the house to find him.
So it was like having a roommate.
It was worse than a roommate. I talked to my roommate.
There was no conversation at all. Okay, so you stopped buying him clothes. You stopped. That was one of the things you did.
I stopped. And a funny thing happened. He didn't notice. But I stopped being so angry about it. So it was I started to sort of get the idea that maybe I might have some control over this anger thing.
Oh.
My first hint, yes.
Okay. And so you got a hold of the skills, and you were, this was one of the first things you did. It sounds like, it's just not buying him clothes, and that gave you a little more hope that there was that you had some power to at least have a different experience on your end
Yes.
of the marriage. But was there a moment when you thought, well, this is working in the way that he's responding to me too?
Yes. There was a very specific night, Laura. It was the evening of one of my classes with you. And that day we were supposed to be grateful. You said, write down in your book 3 things that you're grateful for. It's like, I'm not grateful for anything. My life is disgusting. Everything's horrible. There's nothing to be grateful for. And you said, Mari goes to work every day, right? I said, yeah, he goes to work every day, but he's always gone to work every day. It has nothing to do with me. He said, Mari, just do it.
What a good coach. Okay.
Just do it.
Just do it.
And I thought, well, all right. I paid her. I should listen to her. I'm going to do it because I know she's wrong. And that night, came home and I went over to him, and I remember I knew he was going to make fun of me. I knew it was going to be awful, but
so this was risky.
It was so risky. The only thing that kept me going was looking forward to saying to you, "See, Laura, you're wrong." And so I said to him, I said, "Clark, I just want to let you know, I just want to tell you that I'm really grateful that you go to work every day and that you come home every night." And, oh my God, I just cry thinking about it. Because then he looked at me with this look and he said, "Well, of course I do. I love you. I want to take care of you." And Laura, it just everything changed. Everything changed. He'd never said anything like that. I'd never heard him say anything like that before. Once I learned the skills, I started to realize all the ways that he was always telling me he loved me and wanted to take care of me. But they were in husband speak, and I didn't know that language.
So you got like a new hearing aid. You got new
I hear a translation. Yes, absolutely.
I like this dog collars where the dog says, "I love you temporarily," or something. Yeah, this is okay. So you could finally hear this beautiful sentiment, actually, that this going to work thing was part of him expressing love for Mari.
For taking care of me. Which was, no one ever took care of me like that. No one ever took care of me before.
And there was, earlier on, you were having this financial distress that you were talking about with your house going into foreclosure, your savings being diminished. And he didn't want to talk about that.
Not at all. He would make the crazy hands.
Crazy hands. So this is
the crazy hands. When I would start talking, he'd make the crazy hands and he'd leave the room. I guess that stopped the sound from coming in. I don't know.
So you were just alone with.
I was alone. There was horror. I was alone. Yeah.
And financial chaos, really.
Yes.
And then, and he had no solution for this.
He was not discussing anything. There was nothing to discuss. I just thought he didn't care. It was just another piece of proof that he really didn't care at all about me.
And money is one of the biggest things that people fight about. And that was certainly going on for you at your house, it sounds like.
There wasn't even fighting. There was no discussion. I've been a realtor. I had several pieces of property, as well as my own home. And it was 2005, 2006, the market crashed. And all of my real estate was worth like $1.99. We had just gone through 2 major hurricanes in Florida. I had tenants that were now unemployed and couldn't pay the rent. And Clark was like, the crazy hands, and walking out of the room. It was like, just, what am I supposed to do?
Very stressful.
It was it's hard to go back there.
Right. It is hard to go. It's hard to go back. And so, and the marriage was so bad at this point anyway, because he did later take a job to.
Well, it's an interesting thing. His solution that he had been planning, unknowns to me, was to take a job in Afghanistan where he would get combat pay and high risk pay. And so his salary was like triple what he had been making in the States, which in fact took care of all the debts. And, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that was on his mind. I didn't know he was even considering it. I only found out way afterwards that was the plan. I thought he was going to go to Afghanistan to get away from me.
And what was your reaction when he said he was going to Afghanistan?
Oh, gee, I think that's such a good idea. I really wanted him to go. I wanted him out of my life. And since I couldn't personally murder him, I thought maybe he would go away and my problems would be done. So,
yeah. I mean, you wouldn't have to get a divorce because he'd be dead already.
And then I'd be a widow and everyone would feel sorry for me. Get life insurance.
Oh, you'd get the life insurance. Okay. Who hasn't thought that has a distressed marriage? I know I did. So I love that.
Oh my God. I know. All of my problems would be solved.
I get it. So, all right. So you stopped buying his clothes. You started expressing some gratitude. I mean, What's your relationship like now?
Oh, Laura. I'm living with the man of my dreams. It's the same guy. It's the same guy. He just needed to be respected. He just needed to be allowed to say things the way he wanted to say them in his own words without me helping him. I was very helpful. And he needed to, you know what? I needed to believe in him. I needed to believe that he was very, very capable and competent, and let him do that capable, competent stuff. And he did. And his career is just taken off like crazy. He's 68 years old, and he's in more demand than he ever was in his entire life. He can pick and choose wherever he wants to work. And
he's working back he's back in the States now.
Yes, he was away for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And he's really smart. He's really good at what he does, and he's in an industry that is just growing like crazy, and he's like at the head of the pack. I remember back in those bad old days, I used to think, how is he tricking his boss to think he knows what he's doing at work? This is a man who can't take out the garbage. How can they put him in charge of a department? I guess they could. And he basically can write his own ticket now. Yeah.
Wow. And what about when he comes home? Is there still this wall of silence?
Oh my God. First of all, he calls me on his way home. He calls me. And when he comes home, all right, I'm going to tell a terrible, disgusting story. He came home from work the other day, and I was in the bathroom. And he came into the bathroom to kiss me hello. I said, Clark, I'm on the toilet. Give me a minute. He said, but I missed you so much.
Oh, I love that story. I mean, you feel loved. He could not stand to be away from you one second longer.
I feel adored and cherished. And I feel like I am the number one priority in his life.
Wow.
And, on those days when things are like crappy, because, they still it's life is messy, and sometimes I just get carried away with myself. I have the skills to stop and remember all of the things that are brilliant and beautiful about my husband. And it's all good again.
So if you could go back in time and talk to yourself from before you knew what you know now, what would you say?
I'd say just trust him. Trust him to be your husband, and throw away the wife manual. Throw it away. That stuff's fake. That stuff we see on TV, it's fake. I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. The thing that I learned that's the most important thing of all, Laura, is that what my husband wants the most is for me to be happy.
Mm. And you didn't think that was the case?
I had no idea. No, I never thought that for a moment.
You were sure he didn't care about that?
I was positive.
So what's a tip though for a woman whose situation is where she's feeling like not even as good as roommates because he doesn't talk to me, and she wants to get to the part where he cannot wait for her to come out of the bathroom. He has to run in there and kiss her because he is so adoring. How would she get to where you are? What should she do?
I would say just take a chance. Trust in the skills. Read the stories of the women that have come before you, and just leap in with both feet. That's what I would say.
I love that. Mari, we talked about some hard things today, foreclosures and trying to collect the life insurance so you don't have to divorce, so you can stop Googling the divorce attorneys. What has you be willing to share such vulnerable personal information so publicly?
It is really hard because it's shameful. It's shameful to admit all of those things. But I know that if you hadn't shared your shameful stories, I wouldn't have had the courage to take a chance. And so, it's the play it forward, pay it forward, whatever it is you shared. And because of that, I was able to take a chance and move forward. And I would hope that my story could encourage those women who are feeling so utterly hopeless to just give it a chance. Transformation is there.
I love that. And now you are a coach. You are a gifted, powerful relationship coach who helps other women with their relationships. How has that affected your relationship?
Oh, first of all, it's the best job I've ever had in my life. And I've had a lot of jobs in my life. It affects my relationship because it keeps me honest. It keeps me accountable. And it just really makes me appreciate my husband more and more and more. He's such a great guy.
This has been wonderful to hear your story of how it seemed hopeless and you were looking for a divorce to now feeling so taken care of. That's, I think, the main headline: loved, adored, and taken care of. And thank you so much for sharing it with us, Mari.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, Laura. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do for us.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time to give out the award for the worst relationship advice of the week.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the relationship advice that's making me see red this week is this well-worn suggestion to be totally honest in your relationship. It sounds perfectly virtuous, right? When I was newly married, I took that advice to mean that I should tell him any damn thing that crossed my mind that I wasn't happy about. In other words, I took it as a license to complain and criticize. I felt it was my duty as a wife because the experts said you have to be honest. But here's what I didn't understand about honesty. Honesty is about what's going on with me, what I'm feeling, what I want, what I'm thinking about, my decisions. Not anything to do with telling him that he needs to clean up after himself or that he watches too much TV or needs to stop eating junk. Those are just garden variety criticisms that have nothing to do with honesty. Criticizing my husband is guaranteed to cause tension and distance in my marriage and also be a gigantic distraction from what's happening with me. Who's paying attention to my life when I'm busy focusing on what he's doing wrong? Nobody. If instead I say, I would love a clean kitchen, or I'm leaving this mess here and I'm going to go take a bath, or I'm mad at my sister, or I changed my mind again about the new tile for the bathroom, or I'm so cranky right now, then okay, being honest is good too. That kind of honesty. But that part is rarely explained when you hear about being honest in a relationship. Mostly we think it means it's okay. Maybe it's your duty even to tell him that that shirt does not go with those pants. And for that reason, the advice that you have to be totally honest in your relationship is the worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you get next week's show about the best aphrodisiac on the planet for men. And this week's fun fact is that I keep telling everyone how funny I am, but they don't believe me. Until we talk again, take good care of you.